You know what's kind of crazy? And a warning to start this video, I am going to flex just for about 30 seconds and then we'll get into the match here. But for those of you that were paying attention to my videos prior to the set release, you know that I called Scrooge being undervalued. Going so far as to even say, while I don't normally pre-order cards, Scrooge was one of the few cards that I did end up pre-ordering. And if you did pay attention to that, similar to what we said with Clarabelle and stuff in the past, and I think, a number of other cards, you would have come out ahead. Because if you need your Scrooges now, oh my goodness, have they ever gone up in price? I think almost 50-60% over the pre-order prices. And Tamatoa we knew was going to be a popular card. Who would have guessed that it would have gone to like $100 Canadian, which is where it's at right now. Thankfully, I picked up my 4 foils already. Anyways, with that flex out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into this matchup. We are playing Sapphire Steel Oswald Workshop. This is basically Zan and Jeremy's list, so credit to them for putting this together. I think most people were putting together lists similar to this, minus the Oswalds. I know like my list was very similar, but I was not on the Oswald tech. And I wanted to test it out and see if it was actually good. In this particular match, I end up inking my song because the opponent sees the song with the Diablo, and I'm like, why get it ripped out of my hand for free if they have the Deceiver and or Bare Necessities, which is very likely since my friend here and I both believe that Amber Emerald discard is a very good counter to the meta right now. There you can see Ink a Sudden Chill. They do indeed have the Bare Necessities, so, inking that song was definitely the right choice. But I am on double Lucky Dimes, and I have both of them in my hand. And this is bad for several reasons. Obviously, it's early in the game. I don't want to see Lucky Dimes that early. I have no Fishbone in rotation, which is one of the reasons that you don't normally mind seeing Lucky Dime, at least one copy in your hand. Seeing both, though, also means I can't get it off of the Oswald. And speaking of which, there is a third Oswald. I am starving for ink in a deck that only plays like 16 uninkables. And we miss on a song there. The opponent does have a Diablo devoted on board, which means they're drawing every time I draw. And any card draw engine I set up now, if I let this opposing Diablo live, if I don't see my Storm, my Strength, etc., I'm just going to get cooked, right? Like, I need to see those cards in order to deal with this Diablo. I cannot let them draw like 100 cards off of my workshop and hear him trigger. So my opponent's going to continue to rip apart my hand here, singing the Bare Necessities there, and still has their ink to deploy. They're going to ink another Sudden Chill and play an Aerial. So because they know I have an Oswald, they're just not worried about it at all. I've already got 2 on board. At least these are questing for 2, but yeah, it hurts. So proper sequencing here, top deck an Inkable, right, play out the third Oswald, and then we drop the Tamatoa into the Inkwell. Trigger Oswald number 1, play Fortisphere, opt to draw, which will give my opponent another draw off of the Diablo. There's the 4th Oswald. That's crazy to see that I would have had all of my Oswalds in the opening like 12 cards of the deck. Not great, plus my Lucky Dimes, right? So literally half of my deck was on Inkables, or my draws would have been on Inkables there, which, is just a really, really bad start. The opponent has the Diablo. I don't see any songs other than the Strength in order to deal with it, which I had to ink. If I had multiple Strengths or multiple Let the Storm Rage On, or a combination of them, I could have let one get ripped from my hand in order to deal with their Diablo, because they go quite negative to put up that Diablo shift, right? Like, they have to discard an action, they have to play it over top of their 1-drop Diablo, which isn't too much of a loss. So, trading out or letting them take one of my songs with the Bare Necessities, if I had more than one, might have been a good option. But to be fair, if they had Ursula plus the Bare Necessities, like, they could sing Bare Necessities with the Shift Diablo and then play the Ursula to rip the song. So it's a really big toss-up as to what you think your opponent has. But it's just a difficult situation for Sapphire decks to get out from underneath of early on. And that's why Amber Emerald discard can be a really good option. So here we end up hard casting the top decked Workshop. The opponent Bare Necessitied me last turn to see that I only had a Tamatoa. So obviously I top decked the Workshop there. And off of the inked Tamatoa, we're going to be able to have 3 Oswald triggers, of which we see a Popsicle. And then unfortunately, because of the second redraw off of Workshop, which we triggered, we draw into another item in the Great Stone Dragon. The opponent gets another draw off of both the Popsicle and the Workshop, so they drew 3 during my last turn, 1 for my draw phase, and then 2 off of Popsicle and Workshop. And you can see their hand is quite healthy. Very likely that they have the Under the Sea now, so they're going to go ahead, play an Aerial, and I'm like, yeah, well, if they don't have it yet, they're going to have it now, and sure enough, there it is, the Under the Sea. And they could have sang it last turn, right? They had enough to sing, but here you can see, yep, they're going to opt to sing it. And now all of my Oswalds, because we did put one to the bottom with an Oswald trigger itself, are now at the bottom of the deck. So yeah, that really hurts us. We have Maurice's Workshop draw engine up, but the issue still remains in that we need to top deck a song, of which, we do play 8. We've inked 1, and I think 1 went to the bottom, so there's still 6 left in the deck. We will risk drawing cards in order to deal with the Diablo. There's one of them in the Zeus, and so I end up inking the Great Stone Dragon and taking out the Aerial, getting 2 damage on Bell, and I opt not to Zeus the Diablo, which I think... So what was my thinking here? The opponent has so many cards in hand. I'm like, they're going to end up having... They for sure have discard, right? So if I Zeus the Diablo and let this Tamatoa in my hand get discarded, it's probably worse for me than letting the Diablo... and then Zeusing the Diablo and then letting my Tamatoa get discarded, because they likely just have another Diablo anyways. So I opt to play the Tamatoa and go for the card advantage, letting the Diablo live, letting them draw through their deck. And I don't know, going back and looking at this match, that's a critical point. Do I play the Tamatoa there and get the 2 items, or do I risk just keeping the Tamatoa in hand and Zeusing the Diablo? Because again, the odds are that they discard my Tamatoa in hand, and then they have a second Diablo anyways. So this deck, my friend knows how to play it very, very well. And one thing you have to really be conscious of now in this matchup is the wider their board goes, the higher likelihood that they have the Tramp as well, which will reduce its cost for every character you have, and then they're going to be able to draw cards and then discard them. But you can fix your hand up based on how many characters you have as well. So right now the Tramp would cost 3, not 7, because they have 4 characters on board. So 7 minus 4 is 3. And then they'd be able to draw 4 cards and discard 4 cards. So that is really, really strong there. So the opponent, again, is going to You're Welcome away my my Tamatoa. So it ends up getting dealt with anyways, but at least I got the items off of it. And then they crash their Prince John into my Bell, which is interesting. Here I'm just hoping to draw through some cards. I mean, I'd see the strength, but I have nothing on board. I can't play the Hiram and the Pete in order to get the strength up to the point where I can trigger the Diablo. And this is where, a Bell would have been really nice, or a Scrooge. But unfortunately, I just can't see the cards line up for me. We see a second strength there. The opponent literally just drew like 15 cards. But I have a bunch of cards in my hand as well. So now it comes down to, I don't know, like who can race at this point the fastest. I'm already at 16 though. And this Pete on board, like the Pete is the card that beats the discard deck for sure, if you're a Sapphire Steel player. But look how many cards my opponent has in their hand. You're probably thinking like, there's no way you can win. And I was thinking the same thing. I'm thinking like, I need to see another Pete when I have a board that can actually live through an Under the Sea. And then Pete lock up the game and then quest from there, right? The issue is if they're going to be able to go wide enough that it won't matter, right? I'm just going to... Well, I'm already out advantage, but like I'm going to get any value off of trying to dig through my deck further. They play Ursa the Deceiver. They rip one of my songs, right? One of 2 strengths. Very likely that they just have a Bare Necessities and another Deceiver anyways. But with the 4 characters on board, they're going to tramp for 3, draw 4, take some cards into their hand, and then discard the rest. Well, 4 maximum. So, yeah, the guys, I think me and my friend have been talking about this, and I know he's a big believer in it, and I am too, honestly. The Tramp is a very good card. It does a lot for Amber Emerald. It's a very good card. Like I've already picked up my 4 foils. I picked up non-foils, because I know the card is going to be worth a decent amount. And Amber Emerald, like I've mentioned in previous videos, like the deck is good. The deck is a solid deck. I don't think it's in the same category as the Sapphire decks, but I think it has enough counterplay and it's good into Rogue that you're able to deal with a lot of decks. Like it's just a strong deck overall. Of course, it can lose to itself, but that's any deck, I guess, technically. We end up singing Storm with the P to take out the Diablo, so we can now finally utilize a heavy draw engine without worrying about the opponent drawing even more. So now we're going to go ahead and drop the the Hiram in order to banish and draw 2. Because we shuffled our deck with the opponent's You're Welcome, we end up drawing into our Oswald, or one of them, because all 4 are back in the deck. And then we're going to be able to hard cast Strength on the Lucifer to prevent any bounce back shenanigans. Oh no, I said, yeah, no, sorry, let me go with the Storm. So I get a draw. And I have 1 ink left. I've already inked for turn, so I end up passing because I can't ink and then play the Oswald. The opponent has to deal with my board though, right? I am so close to winning the game that they can't really let any of my characters sit. They know I have the 2nd strength, so they do play a Deceiver. Take a look at my hand there and discard the 2nd strength. And the odds that they have another Diablo is pretty high. They've got 4 ink available and they haven't inked for turn yet, so let's see what they're going to opt to do. I also have to be fearful of things like You Have Forgotten Me and whatnot to really rip apart my hand. But my guess is, like, you know, with a hand that big and how many cards they drew through, there's probably no doubt that they have another Under the Sea anyways. So I'm at severe risk of seeing my board just get wiped. I'm checking their discard there, and I do see multiple Diablos that they opted to discard, and I think 1 Under the Sea as well. They may have gone through 3 already, or maybe just 2. So the deck definitely, like Emerald Amber definitely plays at least 3 Under the Sea, if not 4. So, you know, I've actually almost cleared their threats, right? Like, once I see 3 Under the Sea being used, I'm like, well, the odds you have the 4th one, if you even play a 4th one, is pretty low, right? So I might have a chance still in this game, despite my opponent having this much card advantage. Being on the Sapphire version the Steel version of the Sapphire deck and not the Ruby version, obviously, I don't have board wipes like Be Prepared, like Big Sisu, and that hurts in this kind of matchup. And again, traditionally, because I remember back when Savige was really big on Sapphire Steel, and, you know, he was saying, yeah, the discard deck, the Amber Emerald discard, is a bad matchup for you. And I can see why. It's a very tough match. I mean, you know, keep in mind my opening hand was pretty bad with those double lucky times and the triple Oswalds and whatnot, running out of uninkables, not hitting off the Oswalds despite having that many, right? But we're not out of the woods yet, right? Like, we're actually still in a pretty precarious situation. The opponent's board is quite wide. And we have no way of interacting with it, right? Because we're not on those Ruby cards. So yeah, we're at the mercy of whenever the opponent wants to quest and start developing lore, like, that's what's going to happen. So here I'm taking a look. You can see 3 Diablos in their discard. So I'm like, okay, don't have to worry about that hitting the board again, which is good. We draw into a Popsicle. No Prince John on board. I mean, it's our turn, so it doesn't matter anymore, but no Diablo really helps. We drop the Popsicle, pay an extra 1 to draw an extra card. There is an Oswald. We've discarded the Oswald that was in our hand before with the opponent's Sudden Chill there, I believe. And now, you know, we've got a good hand, but the opponent does have the bigger board state, so it's really about who can race at this point. And again, I have the advantage being at 16. So again, no Scrooge here is really interesting, like not seeing one. I think I put 1 to the bottom and I inked 1, so I guess there's only 2 left to be fair. But yeah, seeing Scrooge here would be nice because I got ample items to exert. We drop the 6-cost Tamatoa. The opponent knows we have a 1 diamond hand from before. Now we have the second one. We ink a Hiram, knowing that we have a second one in hand, and continue to, I think, draw there off of more items. But the opponent with this many cards in hand, this is the issue. They undoubtedly have Bruno, and one of the reasons Bruno makes its way back into the Emerald decks, or at least Amber Emerald, is because your Tramp can also sing it. Like, Tramp being a singer that can reduce itself's cost for, like, it being played, but it's still counting as a 7-cost card for singing, is really, really good. The opponent, I think they're dropped Akita, and yeah, I already was flipping my stuff over and putting it to the bottom for the Under the Sea. So yeah, I lose my board there off of the Kita Under the Sea interaction. They quest, and I believe they're going to, play out another Tramp. This one only costs them 1, and they're able to draw 6. See why this card is broken? Very, very powerful card. So I'm like, all right, like if you didn't have it before, now you definitely have all the pieces you need. I think you've gone through again at this point 3 to 4 under the seas, so you're don't. I'm not a threat at not under threat of being hit by that any longer. Um, but I know that you have the Brunos and I know you have the You're Welcome. So I don't want to play dime because if I play dime and it gets You're Welcomed right away, like that's my turn. That's basically useless. Like I used up that turn for nothing. So I have to be very, very careful here. Yeah, you can see they end up discarding quite a bit of cards, but if they're discarding those cards, I'm like, wow, you're opting to discard such powerful cards. Your hand must be really, really good. They go wide enough that they can quest out here, go to 8, and they're gonna go to 19 next turn if I don't stop them here. And I don't have enough to play the dime and the Tamatoa at the same time, let alone proc the dime. So that's not an option, and it wouldn't even be enough. Oh, no, sorry, it would be enough, me being at 17 now. What I have to do, because they have 11 lore on board, they would go to 19. So the game's not over yet. I don't need to waste my storm. I need to find a Pete. That's what I need to do. So I'm going to start by playing Hiram, banish the Fortisphere, draw 2. Okay, Tamatoa and a Popsicle. Normally, absolutely fantastic cards, but we need to see certain things. I'm going to end up dropping an Oswald. I still have 4 ink available. The Oswald misses, putting a Zeus to the bottom. And like I said, I need to see a Pete. I have 4 ink, so all I can really, and I've already inked for turn, so all I can really do is play a Popsicle for my final draw and see if I grab a Pete off the top, and I do. So with my final 3 ink, I dropped a Pete. The opponent cannot do anything to interact with my board, so next turn I just win the game, right? Unless they have a way to shift and gain more lore, or they can't sing a song, they can't play any actions. Next turn I just quest for game, but I do have the lucky dime that will be able to be played and procced at the same time. So yeah, my opponent reveals my hand, the You're Welcome and the Bruno, and I'm like, I knew you had those. It's why I had to really wait and I didn't play out the dime or the big Tamatoa because I didn't want it to get just outed instantly. And we are able to take that one very, very scarcely there though. A very tough matchup. If you're interested in more of this deck and for the deck list and for more matches, make sure you're subscribed. Thank you again for watching. If you made it this far, Quantum is out.